beautiful day. What we have here is that the IOC is ready to ban transgender people from the Olympics, which is warranted and needed because obviously this is just something that transgender people, mostly men, were trying to compete in to get easy wins from women because it's been quite obvious. I mean, even the swimmer has done this as well, so it's not really a surprise. But we have this here where what this video will quite clearly show of what is going on, what's the IOC ban about, et cetera, including this far leftist liberal that is calling Trump a pedo for some god apparent reason. But, I digress. So without further ado, here's a clip.
Committee is reportedly ready to ban transgender women from competing in all female categories. The Times of London reports that the change is set to be announced early next year. Under the current policy, trans women have been allowed to compete in the female category as long as tests reveal reduced testosterone levels. But the final decision has always rested with the individual sports. Now, exactly how that policy will be changed, unclear at the moment. In fact, an IOC spokesperson denied that a decision has even been made. They did confirm to the Post, however, that the IOC conducted a science-based review of the athletic advantages of competitors who are born biologically male. The findings of that study were presented in a closed-door meeting last week. The big question now is whether these new rules, if they are released in the coming months, would be enforced for the Winter Olympics in Italy that begin this February.
I'm just going to say this for the millionth time. Transgender people don't play sports. Definitely not at the Olympic level, which is extremely elite and can cost up to $100,000 just to compete. It's not happening. It doesn't happen. The rare cases that it does should not warrant a headline. The New York Times, the Jerusalem Post, the New York Post. I mean, everybody is running this. If you were running like headlines that said transgender people #1 in prostitution, I mean, at least you could find that in my community. But being an Olympic athlete, no. Like, you should have to go into the bylines to find this. But no, of course, instead, it's fucking everywhere. You're pushing an agenda. There aren't even 3 million transgender adults in this country, but there are 342 million people in this country. So what is up with this disparity? Why is it headline after headline do I see all y'all talk about is transgender people? Because you're trying to distract from the fact that you allowed a pedophile to reach the highest levels of power in this country. You're sick. Focus on that. Focus on the person at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Do not focus on trans people.
So here's the problem that I have with this lady here and things that I want to also address. Now, the reason why people are talking about this and the reason why, which is funny because I just had a conversation with this yesterday with an individual. It pretty much what it would be is that even though that there are a very low percentage of the population of the U.S., it's just a matter of fact that this type of ideology is trying to be forced down people's throats, and people are revolting against it, as you can see. It's not really a surprise here onto why this is happening. It's not really a surprise here onto why people do not want to deal with the transgender nonsense. It's just because of the mere fact that you've been trying to shove this down people's throats and make policies into other situations here to where you want it to be allowed. And you're making it to where women are actually threatened in terms of their actual physical health, because when we had a transgender person enter the soccer field or the volleyball area, he hit the ball so hard that he paralyzed half of her body, and she had to be sent to the hospital. So I don't know about you, but it seems to be a massive disparity with transgender people entering the sports. Even though it's a small minority, it's such a problem that is actually causing severe issues within the transgender community itself, specifically with going against women. So that's the reason why you're forcing you're forcing women to have to allow and deal with transgender individuals going into their bathrooms. So I don't know about you, but you say that they're female, right? Well, that's not the case here. What about the transgender individual that went into the female bathroom and decided to grape this child? How about the transgender person that went that that was picking on women? Like, there's a whole bunch of situations here to where even when we had the situation where the black woman here was going out and went into the gym in LA, and she was angry because this guy claimed he was a woman. Look at this guy. He is clearly not a woman. He is clearly not anything of the sort, but he says that he's a female, and he just walks into the female bathroom and claims because he's female. This is not the reality that people want to be living in. All right, like this is disgusting behavior, and men use this to get access or free access to women's bathrooms or colleges, etc., or their sports, and to get free wins because they're biologically stronger. They know this. They just feign ignorance. And you going out and saying, "Oh well, Trump for matter, he's the only thing you can actually intrude from this is that from your low IQ, because you're an idiot, the only way you can intrude from this is that saying he hasn't released the Epstein files, and because he hasn't released the Epstein files, he is a pedo. Well, that is a mere accusation. We don't know on how accurate or true that is. So you're making a broad assumption of something that doesn't make any bloody sense. So if you want to know why people are against it, the things that I just laid out here are exactly why people are against the whole transgender community, and why people are tired of it. Of course, we're going to have some much other reasons here. We have the IOC to ban transgender women from all female Olympic events. The International Olympic Committee is reported to set to ban transgender women from competing in all female categories. The change is set to be officially announced early next year. The Times reported on Monday, citing sources, the decision to overhaul the current policy was made after the sporting committee carried out a science-based review of a biologically born male's physical advantages. The report also claimed that there were clear advantages with athletes who had disorders of sexual development (DSD), a range of conditions where a person can have characteristics of both sexes that can appear at different points in their lives. This is what we call hermaphrodites, or etc. These people are very, very low percentage. They're not even the 0.8. They're like more like 0.2. They're extremely rare, and the chances of them ever remotely being in the Olympics is slim to none. Because people that go into the Olympics are already low in percentage anyways, and if you add the fact that these people are to the people that to enter these things, with the very low percentage of these people being this, it's almost rare for that to happen. It goes on to say here, Keefe, who has said she was born a woman, has never been verified to have DSD, and her family insists she was born and raised as a girl. The findings were presented by the IOC's medical and scientific director, Dr. Jane Thornton, in a closed-door meeting last week. It was a very scientific, factual, and unemotional presentation, which quite clearly had laid out the evidence. Under the current guidance, trans women have been able to compete in the female category with reduced testosterone levels, but the decision has ultimately been left up to individual sports. Yeah, so the individuals here are being banned, and they are not be allowed in the Olympics, and I support this. I think it's a lot better for women to be able to enter not have biological men in their sports. Now, to also add, we keep on saying this time and time again, and it's been repeated. But why don't they create their own sports? Because you could have transgender sports where all transgender people are involved and everything will be okay. But you guys don't want that. You guys don't want that. You want the easy advantage of being able to do this, right? And that's the thing. You want to be able to enter female sports because you want free access to these women, etc., and be able to beat these women or humiliate them. That's what I truly believe, because there's no other reason why we say we can have transgender sports and you just simply will not allow that to happen. That is just plain and simple. So we're going to go on to here to where CNN is crying and complaining about the old transgender athletes being banned from women's sports because, that's what they do.
Competitive advantage over non-trans athletes. What do you say to them?
There's no evidence that trans athletes have an advantage over anyone else in sports. Trans athletes play sports for the same reasons as anybody else, for our love of the game, to be a part of a team, to challenge ourselves, and most of all, for the youth level, to have fun. And every young person deserves that opportunity to be their authentic self and to play the sports that they love without compromising any part of who they are.
I'm curious about that, Chris, because you say that there's no evidence that there's a competitive advantage, but we've heard from parents who've had a different experience. They've argued that there is irrefutable evidence, irrefutable differences in physiology between the sexes, that hormone therapies don't sufficiently level the playing field. Do you get where they're coming from?
We have to look at what we're talking about here. And if we're talking about youth sports is part of our educational system. And as part of our educational system, young people learn values such as discipline, hard work, leadership, teamwork, communication skills, and so much more from their participation in sports. We know that each body is different, every person is different, and that even amongst cisgender kids that are not transgender, there are differences in their strength, their speed, their ability, their natural ability, as well as differences in their access to good coaching, to great equipment, to things like rest and recovery or proper nutrition, all of the things that go into making someone be a good athlete. And I think that people don't really consider those other factors. The laser focus has been on hormone therapy or testosterone. And when we're talking about young kids, which is part of what this executive order will be applying to, I think we really miss the mark when we're focusing so heavily on biology and not on the lived experience of kids who are just trying to have the educational experience as their peers.
So my whole problem with this is simple. The thing that we have to address here with this Chris Moiser guy, and the difference of we're not going by biology, by the experience. That's the problem. You're not going by biology. You're just going by emotions. You're just going by the experience, and that means absolutely nothing. You have to go by biology. And the one thing, too, is that we have to, when we go out and address these things as well, we have to talk about the age, right? Kids should not have to be dealing with transgenders at all. You are trying to push a agenda onto children that are going through so many hormones and stuff like that, and you are trying to force or indoctrinate these people to think they're the opposite sex. That's not how this works. You're going to screw up a whole bunch of kids here. Let's just have kids grow up to be kids. Put them in the actual categories to where they should belong. Male goes to male and female goes to female. It's really not that difficult. And with that being said, if all that goes down well and they want to transition at the age of 18, which I would prefer 25, but we can make consensus here, okay, you can transgender at 18, but when you're a kid, you shouldn't be worrying about being a transgender or what have you. That's not something you need to be going through at all. And we have a lot of schools and a lot of places trying to do this to kids. And it's just not okay. And there is biological differences because when you get to a certain age, is that you will be going through this type of stuff. And again, you will be putting these kids through hormones and all that stuff, ruining their lives. So this guy here is going to try to appeal to emotion. And he doesn't want to go off of biology, which would be the correct thing to go off of, and not science. And he'd rather go by emotion. Because when you say experience, what is experience? Experiences are things that you have dealt with over life, that you have personally dealt with, that will affect you emotionally, right? Now, some things may be facts, some may not be facts. But the point being is he's ignoring the biological fact, which is biological means science, which biological would actually be something that would be all fact-based. And rather than going off the experience, which is he says they have to go off of, it's just off of emotion. And that's not okay. We need to stop with this emotional BS. We need to address ourselves full-heartedly of what we want to do here because that's just the reality. So at the end of the day, Transgenders have been banned in the Olympics. I'm all for it. We need to get back to normalcy. We need to get back to the reality of things. If you transgender people want to create your own sports where both men and women can compete, or what have you, and transgender are all around allowed, then go and do that. But stop trying to force the normal populace, the 99% of the populace, of trying to be forced into your ideology and have to deal with you, because that's not how that works. We should not have to deal with you. We should have to be able to accommodate, which means accommodation is having your own sport. And if you don't want to deal with that, then that just means you're just trying to abuse the system, and we're not going to allow that here. All right, guys, that's it for the video. Like, subscribe, share. As always, take care, my friends.